Hey, what's good, y'all? I'm CBH of CD Southern, creator of Southern Gridiron Darts, and today I'm here to ask, are we about to see a seismic change to the way the game of soccer is played around the world starting this year in Canada? Yeah, I know. I called it soccer, but don't worry. You'll get over it. All right, so before we get too deep into this, you probably noticed the screen to my left playing out an American-style game of football. That's my Southern Gridiron Darts app, and it's a way to replicate football while throwing darts in real life. This here is an actual game I played against a computer in association with this topic. The video you're watching here is the combo version of that match. If you like to watch the whole game with me throwing darts while playing against the computer, then you can click in the link below. And if you would like to try out the game yourself, then download my app, grab some darts, find a dartboard, and start playing Southern Gridiron Darts. It's available on Android, iPhone, tablets, and iPads. All right, enough of the promo. Let's get back on topic. So roughly 6 years ago, Arsene Wenger, former manager of Arsenal and current FIFA chief of football development, suggested a rule change to combat marginal offside calls while promoting attacking play. This rule is known as the Daylight Offside Law and will be implemented this year for the first time in a professional league, the Canadian Premier League. Here's a quick breakdown of the law. Currently in soccer, if any part of an offensive player's body is beyond the second to last defender when the ball is played to them, then that attacker is deemed to be offside, with a free kick being awarded to the opposing team. In American football, this is equivalent to a defensive player having a part of their body across the line of scrimmage when the ball is hiked, which is offsides against the defender. Wenger's suggested change is that if any part of the attacker's body is still in line with the second to last defender, then he is still onside. Effectively, this is how offside works in the game of hockey, whereas an offensive player may not enter the attacking zone until the puck has crossed the blue line into that attacking zone. If an attacker enters the zone before the puck, then they are deemed offsides. But if any portion of the attacker's body is still touching that blue line, then they are onside, even if the rest of their body is across the line. So in soccer terms, this means an attacker's entire body must be beyond the second to last defender in order for them to be offside. This subtle change will give attackers an extra step and a half to make runs in behind the back line, which theoretically will result in more attacking play. Offside in soccer, much like hockey, was originally implemented to prevent cherry picking and goal hanging. This is when an attacker essentially camps out near the opposing team's goal, waiting for the ball to be cleared downfield past all the defenders so they can have a one-on-one with the goalkeeper. If this were allowed, it created a scenario resembling a game of lacrosse, in which half the players on the field are situated around one goal, and the other half is situated around another goal. Once action is finished at one goal, then play will immediately transition to the opposite end of the field like a game of basketball. Essentially, soccer would lose a piece of the reason it's called the beautiful game, build-up play. Build-up play is when the attacking team is forced to navigate and outmaneuver the defense's positioning and their negation of space. This fluid dance-like motion of the two teams trying to off-balance one another is part of the beauty of a well-played, emphasis on well-played, soccer match. It's a game of positional chess, which is a symphony for the eyes to watch. The offside law causes teams to play within a relatively compact amount of space, which is conducive for forcing combination play in order for offenses to move the ball up the field. Attackers must create space within the defense through off-the-ball movements and positioning instead of simply booming the ball upfield to a waiting teammate, which would be the case if you did not have offside. Interesting enough, offside doesn't exist for kids playing at a really young age because the field is too small to necessitate the rule. The same can be said for indoor soccer or even 7v7 outdoor soccer. This is because the constricted dimensions of the field keeps play compact naturally, negating the need for the offside law. Over the past several years, daylight offside has been tested in youth tournaments across Europe, but was finally given the go-ahead at professional level this year. Canada's Premier League was chosen because it's a relatively new league in a country that doesn't care about the game in the same way as Europe or South America, so the change is not likely to ruffle any feathers like it would in Europe. So now, how could this potentially affect gameplay and strategy? Well, it could lead to more goals, but in my opinion, the bigger, more important effect is that it could lead to more offensive play and goal-scoring opportunities, because there's nothing worse than watching a match that barely has any attacking intent. Also, this change would significantly hinder a backline's ability to rely on the offside trap. The offside trap is when a defense intentionally uses the offside law to inhibit attacking runs in behind the back line. When anticipating a pass, a defender will push up away from their own goal at the last second in order to trap an attacking player offside. This effectively becomes a get out of jail free card for defenders as it encourages them to move up away from their own goal in order to play defense. So let's say a defender falls asleep and does not track the movement of an attacking player, or is slow in anticipating a pass in behind. Well, then, all they have to do is hold their line or push up away from their own goal in order to inhibit the run of the attacking player by trapping them offside. Essentially, the attacker ends up getting penalized for a defender being too slow to react or not tracking a run, which is the antithesis of playing defense in the first place. The offside trap goes against the spirit of the original intention of the law. It's an exploitation of the original purpose, which was simply to prevent cherry picking, not to restrict offensive runs that occur 40 yards or even 10 yards away from goal. Another criticism of the rule, if you can consider the elimination of the offside trap a genuine criticism, is the potential elimination of the high press. The high press in soccer is similar to a full court press in basketball or forechecking in hockey. This is when you place an extreme amount of pressure on your opponent when they have possession near their own goal. Part of what makes an effective high press is the constriction of space in behind the front line of pressure, so the team in possession cannot quickly find and exploit this space in order to lead to a breakaway on the opponent's goal. So the argument is the potential diminished effectiveness of a high defensive line, the back line encouraging offside and constricting space in behind the front line, they will become dangerously pointless for the front line to press high. But in my opinion, I would disagree on this take, based on the elemental principles of playing defense in soccer. At an incredibly young age, you learn that when your opponent is in possession and is facing or advancing towards your back line, then you drop off to limit passes in behind. When your opponent is moving away from your goal, then you push forward to gain defensive territory and constrict operating space for the team in possession. If you abide by these simple rules, then it will be incredibly difficult for an offense to exploit a high defensive line with a 40-yard pass. And if the team in possession is able to break the pressure of that front line, then the back line simply prepares to drop off and prevent any passes in behind them. This is simple defense that's played at a very young age, and you learn it at that age, and you carry up with you until you reach the age in which offsides are implemented. Then you're kind of taught a different way to start playing defense, in which you hold the line for as long as possible, or you push up in order to trap somebody offside, instead of abiding by the original principles of playing defense. Also, goalkeeper position would need to change, as they would have to become more active in defensive play higher up the field. This means they effectively become sweeper keepers, similar to Manuel Neuer of Bayern Munich. In this situation, keepers will act less like keepers camped out in their own penalty box, and they'll end up playing higher up the field to cut off any passes in behind the back defensive line. Keepers will become extra defenders assisting behind the back line, though they'll still need to be careful about how far up they push, just in case someone attempts a shot from deep in their own half. Another criticism is that some claim that this rule will promote bunkering play by defenses. Bunkering is when you essentially place all your field players in your own half in front of your penalty box to constrict space while expressing little to no attacking intent. This strategy, in theory, cuts off or limits the amount of space behind the back line due to the defenses playing so deep into their own half. But to me, I actually believe it'll have the opposite effect of inviting attackers right on top of your own goal. Remember, with the daylight law, attackers now have an extra step and a half they can exploit to make runs in behind the defense before they will be deemed offside. This extra step will open up massive passing lanes that are currently not available due to the restrictive nature of offside today. And if a defense backs too far up in front of their own goal, then they are allowing attacking access into their own box, where anything could happen, from a deflection, handball, or blinding your own goalkeeper to a shot. Not to mention, quite a few goals are often scored just outside the penalty box, so the further you drop off, the more chances attackers will have to get into this threatening position and take a shot on goal. In my opinion, it'd be best to have forwards and midfielders apply as much pressure on the ball as possible, so if space or a passing lane does open up behind the defense, then the ball carrier would not be in a position to look up and exploit that space with a pass. On the ball pressure and proactive sweeper keeping will be essential to negating space for attackers to exploit with the daylight offside law. But to be honest, I'm not sure how this rule will play out until I see it for myself. But in any case, I'll definitely be watching more Canadian Premier League this season than I ever thought I would in my entire life. And if FIFA deems it successful, then we could see this change come to the rest of the globe as soon as next year, potentially. All right, so that's it for this topic. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, check out the match version of this video here by clicking below in the description. Also, don't be afraid to show me some love by downloading my game, Southern Gridiron Darts, if you're a fan of American football and tossing darts with friends. All right then, so until next time, stay dirty.